Time for another episode of The Thought Project, just so you know. And today we're going to be starting out with a song by Kylie Minogue called Tension. It's a new release. I have no significance around the song. I'm just playing it for you because it's a new pop song that's been released here at the beginning of, what do you want to call this? We're in September in the U.S. It's heading towards fall, but we're still at the end of summer. Well, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But here's the song. Okay. So I think that's enough of that. If you hadn't heard of Kylie Minogue, she's an Australian singer, is very popular in Europe, and she's been around since the 80s. So she made her fame chart topping first hit Locomotion probably back in like 1989 or something, maybe 1987. It was a long time ago. Anyway, so it's just amazing that she's still around and been popular this summer apparently and making songs. So, and she doesn't actually have a history as far as I know of stealing from anybody. So that's good. And always seemed to have had a good rapport with her staff and relationships anyways. So, and she very clearly falls into the line of the Commonwealth and your sort of English entertainment companies that are related to Australia. India sort of goes down the line. Anyway, so not really a part of the U.S. systems and certainly not part of the Russian systems either. So kind of just fast facts. They're going with the theme of the show. As far as the U.S. economy goes today, our oil prices are up, and this has had some benefits, I think, for the energy sector because rising prices means that they'll make more money. But then for everybody else, it just goes back to pain at the pump, essentially. So another painful, not so fun experience for average Americans going into paying more for gas again for a while. Hopefully it'll go down again soon. That's all I got to say about it. Job numbers have not really risen. There's been a slowdown on jobs growth again. And I think people are just, kind of hanging in there. Anyway, so I'm going to go on into some other topics right now, some major announcements that are kind of important. I think right now you need to know that the Pentagon announced several measures on Wednesday here in the U.S., which is that they're going to be doing a new security assistance package to Ukraine for $175 million, including helping them with depleted ammunition for their Abrams tanks. And this is the first time the U.S. is sending the controversial armor to them, as well as just to make sure that they have the munitions here and there in Kiev. I don't know if I said that quite right. So basically, they're sending them an assistance package that will help with resupplying uranium and munitions. And then the U.S. is also going to be sending a nuclear sub to Guam, a fairly large U.S. Navy sub to Guam, in order to deal with some of the issues there as far as China becoming more hostile and aggressive in their exercises with Russia and China together, along with now North Korea. And then also there's been a pledge made to send thousands of drones to China by the U.S. government to counter their fairly advanced weapon systems, which they've been using to attack both the U.S. and other countries. And if you're familiar with this, that goes back to the issues around the Chinese signet systems, which unfortunately does tie back to the Russian mafia and their relationships, all the stuff I've been talking to you about with the Russian mafia and the attacks and the weird tie-ins to Hollywood and the CCP and all of it. It's actually all one ball. So, I mean, nobody would ever normally have thought of the Chinese government being run by the CCP as being Russian mafia, but that's essentially what it is. It's just another facet of that. It's another facet of the K.G.B, F.S.B sort of mafia, machine. So, from there, that's what the U.S. government has decided to do as of Wednesday. And whether or not you would tie that then into what happened in Hawaii, it's hard to say. I'm just waiting to see somebody take some action on some of these so-called celebrities that we have that are tied into these issues that are not taking responsibility for their behavior and behaving very poorly. It's also important to note that Turkey declared war on Russia That would have been on the 6th of September, and it's just been kind of an interesting turn of events because Turkey wasn't really a country that seemed like they were going to get involved and had actually worked with Russia before the past and then chose to make that decision. You also need to note that Slovakia's Robert Fico of the Smear Party, SMER, has decided to halt arms deliveries to the Ukraine if his party was elected to run Slovakia. So their elections are something to watch only because it's a small country that looks like if he were running it would at least become neutral and no longer support the Ukraine in their attempts to remain free from Russia. I know it seems kind of down in the weeds and is a small country, but it's worth focusing on, seriously. And then we also need to talk about, I just want to say this show is actually dedicated to Steve Harwell of Smashmouth. I saw him perform live back in 2001 when I was working at E! Entertainment. As some of you know, I was basically an intern there. They gave me really great references and then wanted to hire me, and I couldn't go because of the situation with Kendrick, Cersei, and Wilhelm. So I was actually blocked out of a job in that industry. And I wouldn't go back today because I don't want to live in Los Angeles, and I'm too poor to live out there, as are most people. So that's how that went. So poor times for entertainment, but it was definitely a place and a site in 2001 where Smash Mouth performed and performed really well. And I really enjoyed their performance that year. So kind of a fun memory to look back on. I think we have to talk on a few things here. There's a couple of things that I need to put together, basically. We have to talk a little bit about the K.G.B. again. They're called the F.S.B. today, but a lot of people still don't quite understand some of what they do, even though they've explained it before, so I'm going to revisit the topic just briefly. When you're talking about the K.G.B. and understanding them, what you're talking about is the people who actually invented the joy buzzer. The joy buzzers actually bring people joy. It's a literal buzzer, so they put their hand, they then go to shake your hand. Remember people used to shake hands? And in the U.S., anyways, more regularly, don't as much anymore. Part of the reason for that practice starting to fall by the wayside, not being done as regularly, is because of the use of the joy buzzer. The K.G.B., which supports Russia, also called the F.S.B. today, would actually, someone put one of those on, give you a shake, and give you a jolt with it. Well, in the modern day era, they've taken up actually using signature systems to do that, so they don't actually have to be seen as carrying a device around. But one thing you'll note is if you're in a home or a situation where things feel weird, you're talking to someone that seems to be strangely magnetic, you may want to consider that they actually have a device on them of some sort, just like that. Remember that Wilhelm, who's still alive today, is actually a part of the FSB, and so is Cersei. That was identified as being a problem with them. Why the U.S. government hasn't done more to actually deal with them here in the U.S., in this country, I don't know. My biggest concern is that the U.S. keeps sending weapons and materials abroad to deal with these countries instead of actually dealing with their people here in the U.S. And that's where we really need to focus, actually, is dealing with people right here in the homeland that are actively part of the FSB, K.G.B. communities that are actively attacking and hateful to U.S. citizens, regular people, and the U.S. government. Because that's actually a real issue. And it's important to note that the media has definitely lied a lot and covered it up, and that's has something to do with the amount of money they received from Russian organizations and the FSB, KGB itself in some cases. So what you're looking at is that they're considered to be this elite organization and that there's nothing elite about them. And they're basically just modern day criminals. And that's a lie, that they're elite, that they're sophisticated, that they look beautiful or talk in a gorgeous manner. They don't. As my father pointed out when I was a kid, he said, you got to remember Cersei and Wilhelm are K.G.B. And they're disgusting. They masturbate in public. They act gross. They freak out. I confronted Kendrick about that back when I was a young woman. I said, I don't want to be a part of the K.G.B. I don't like them. I said, because they're gross. And he started freaking out and screaming and yelling and throwing a tantrum and saying, they're gross. I said, oh, we're gross. And yelling. I said, shut up. Quit throwing tantrums. Act like an adult. And he said this all in English, someone who speaks Russian, but that's the point about them, is that they throw temper tantrums and they're pretty unreasonable and they masturbate in public and they scare people and they steal and lie. And they have no problem throwing temper tantrums and hitting people and just injuring them. And, Wilhelm has injured a lot of people as a fake doctor and thought it was extremely funny, and it's just not. There's nothing funny about it. So, and you have to remember that a lot of their behaviors and arguments, another lie is that, the left is just truly trying to destroy institutions in the U.S. That's not really true. From what I've seen of the left, having lived in the D.C. area, the actual left, is that they've mostly been looking for the expansion of their civil rights, the right to be married, their rights around money and property. It's only people that were actually tied into the FSB that were actually deliberately trying to take everyone's money and their rights and your rights to be married. They're the ones that do crazy things. Kendrick and his spouse, for example, they got in trouble with the DOJ because they were asking everyone to work for free. And, specifically that his lover, now spouse, who's a man, actually, was demanding that the U.S. government tell me that I was supposed to work for free because she wanted free labor. So the other people, they put a stop to it. So the DOJ did stand up for me there, although they didn't do anything more punitively to them, which is what they need to do. Still needs to happen with that company. But, and may be happening, but, I'll let you know when I hear about it. We'll know when the outcome actually is received. So, it's just important to know all that, because the idea of somebody that is a very K.G.B, F.S.B type behavior to try to claim that you're simply, because of your position or status as someone's lover or whatever, to claim that you provide information when you don't, or even if you did, that you should have things for free from another person and everyone else should just be slaves, work for free. That's very much part of their agenda, to work for Russia, to want, the U.S. citizens and other countries to be slaves. So you have to remember that. You can't really give them what they want. And anyone who wants to do that is not your friend. Probably part of it, somebody you're going to have to treat as a hostile enemy and get away from. That's what it comes down to. It's not somebody you're going to be around. Not if they want you to, not if they're looking for slaves. I went to a number of churches in the D.C. area that all turned out to be a part of it. They had too many people from the F.S.B running them, and they were looking for free labor. And, the reality is that the government just hasn't done enough to take care of people when it comes to these issues. And so people are really having to defend it for themselves, but you can also use that economically to argue for yourself and to move out of situations, recommending, I say this through my own experience, that you basically say, you know what, I have to pay for myself. Like, I have to have regular legal employment because that's the law. There's no why or what or how about it. That's actually how the U.S. works. So you can very easily just say, I don't have time for you people because you expect too much for free. Literally. Nobody does. And it wouldn't matter if they made time for you to do things with them, because you work. You're a working person. Even if you don't have good employment and make a lot of money, you're still a working person, because you work to take care of yourself. You do not have the luxury of hanging out and having people serve you. You actually work to clean your home. You clean your bathroom. You clean your car. You walk your dog. You take care of yourself. You make your own food. You clean and cook for yourself. You're a working person. Everybody has work. Everybody does. And some people have personal projects, and then you have employment where, you work and you get paid for it. And maybe you're employed by someone, or maybe you're your own employer, but that is the reality of how it actually works here in the U.S. And there's no getting around or changing it. Nobody can change that. They can't, because it's just the way the system here actually works. It doesn't matter what Russia or China or anybody else says. And I deal with one too many Russian thugbears from the K.G.B/F.S.B that wanted to argue about that way too long with all of us in the D.C. area. And there was a long phase where we were just every day getting pounded by Russia's K.G.B here in the U.S., complaining and freaking out. And the fact that there's so many of them around there that have been raping and beating women up, and there's so many people who've been shifty and assets in the government and acting crazy about it, is just it's overwhelmingly nuts. It's worth being concerned about. But moving on, just so you understand the gravity of the situation and where things are at. By the way, the internet is actually swimming in footage of people angry at the Rock and Oprah over asking for funds to fix Lahaina, where they have homes after Lahaina was burned. And then Oprah, of course, had made a bunch of really significant financial investments. She went on, made a video with The Rock and started asking for everyone to give them money. And they're both multimillionaires or billionaires? Oprah's definitely a billionaire. I think The Rock is a multimillionaire. But either way, they both invested a lot there, and now they're asking for regular people to actually give them money in an area that, they heavily invested in an area that's been constantly heavily hit by aggressive investors and real estate aggression. And everybody sees this fire very much as being that, of course, knowing that Russia and China have a vested interest in trying to make money off of it. And it's a major tourist site, very pretty. And, there's the U.S. Navy has a base on one of the other islands, Lahaina. So it just ends up really, the whole thing is just, it's really kind of, it's just, how do they even bother to ask for it? I'm just disgusted that either of them would ask for that when they both have so much money in this area they live and that they've messed up. They really need to get their money out and pay for those damages and fix it. Stop asking the rest of us to care, because it's just way too much to even bother with. I think, I don't know, what should I do for a song today? I'm just looking around here and I didn't really pick one. Maybe one of those days where I just don't bother singing, or I sing like something religious just for fun, like just to tie up the show. But I think the last topic I'm going to go into here is that Trey Cyrus, who is Miley Cyrus's brother, is now claiming that this is really weird. I didn't source this out like several times and I looked for like two stories on it, but basically he's claiming that by engaging in nude modeling on OnlyFans, women are ruining their chances of finding a good guy. He said there's so many girls that do OnlyFans that have cost their chance of ever settling down with a good guy with morals. And he also got women for calling men who protest about it insecure. It must be really nice to not have to actually work. And I'd mean that in the sense of cleaning or cooking or anything for yourself and not have to even worry about employment, which is who he is. And he's Miley Cyrus's brother. But, this guy just looks like this loser who, all of us are struggling these days in the U.S. on average. We're having a really hard time. And it's very difficult to find regular legal employment that lasts. And there's a lot of behavioral disorders and mental health issues. And a lot of it is tied to the F.S.B's effect on the U.S., tied to the CCP. And I think the idea of arguing that women are supposed to be worried about getting married as opposed to working the best they can at whatever legal employment they can find, which OnlyFans is, you get tax records out of it, you can report all the government, get your taxes off of it, all that stuff done. It's legal employment, honey. You can't sit around and wonder about the prospect of marrying a man in this era because the men are tired and don't have money themselves, and a lot of them have some really unreasonable stipulations, and one of those is that they tend to only want to marry women who have money. So you may find yourself in what could be a catch-22 if you even bother worrying about being married. So I wouldn't bother. And I certainly wouldn't worry about trying to be married to a man like Trey Cyrus or any of the rest of them. He's not a model of anything a woman would want to work for. Regular employment, good employment, that's the only thing most women should ever want to focus on or care about at all. Whatever that is. Legal employment. Making money legally for yourself. That's what you got to focus on. I don't even know, like, the fact that my allergies are bothering me. Like, Miley's tied in with that agency that I don't really like, and they're Russian, and Trace is in with it, obviously, somehow, and they don't like OnlyFans. Because OnlyFans was founded by people who go against what they do, because they were good at trafficking people, and OnlyFans is cut into that. So I think I'm going to go with OnlyFans on this, especially since I'm actually on the site. Even if I'm not like the top 1% or 10% on the site, 43-year-old woman, I'm on it. And I don't think I'm going to worry about whether or not I'm going to lose out of my marriage prospects to Trey Cyrus over it. I think I'll let those go. I think I'm good. Okay. So anyways, I'm going to end this show with the song Amazing Grace. I'm just going to sing the hymn for you. I sang it last year, and I just thought it'd be nice to kind of revisit the song because it's a fun one. So, and then we're going to shut the show down for today. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Though many dangers, toils, and snares I have already come, 'tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been here 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first began. Amazing grace, how sweet that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. And that is the thought project, just so you know, for today. And I'll see you again. And please subscribe at Deborah KC on YouTube. Thank you.